Good evening. Welcome to Skwat Tawks. Tonight we're going to be talking about the book Mastery by George Leonard. And while we're talking about the book Mastery by George Leonard, you're going to be watching me do a 15-minute session. It's an EDT session, escalating density training session. I do a 15-minute PR zone with squats of 275. And I'm alternating that with pull-ups. I think I get 30 reps. They're all doubles and triples throughout. I think I get 30 reps total with the squats and pull-ups. And then after that I do 4 sets of what's known as Russian hockey deadlifts. Russian hockey deadlifts are a deadlift variant. I use a kettlebell, and there's a rotational component added to Russian hockey deadlifts. So it's kind of an interesting little exercise. I learned from a DVD by Pavel Tsatsouline in his DVD Resilient. And I found that this exercise kind of helps out my hips, helps me work out some of those old man niggles that I've seemed to develop through training over the years. So EDT session and then the Russian hockey deadlifts. So this book, Mastery by George Leonard, it's a great one. It's been around since the 90s. If you've read other books on the subject of mastery, for example, Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, if you've read the book called Mastery by Robert Greene, both of those are best-selling authors. The book Outliers talks a lot about 10,000 hours towards mastering things. 10 years or 10,000 hours. You've probably heard that 10,000 hour rule when it comes to mastery. And that's popularized by Malcolm Gladwell. Mastery by Robert Greene is a great book as well. It's a really thick book. There's lots of anecdotes in it. Both of those are great books. Really well written and really comprehensive books, I think. Malcolm Gladwell's book, I think, has come under fire a little bit, but I think most of us understand that 10,000 hours might not be an ironclad rule, but the idea of mastery is that it takes a long time to master something. And I think that Malcolm Gladwell made that pretty clear in his book. So, yeah, they're good. This book predates both of them. It was published in the 90s by George Leonard. George Leonard is a veteran and an Aikido teacher, so most of the anecdotes and the things that he talks about have to do with sports and with martial arts and with his experiences in the military. It's a really great book. I highly recommend that you pick up a copy. Your copy might look different than mine. I used to have an older edition, I think. And on it, I think it had Leonardo da Vinci's The Perfect Man on the cover. So your copy might look a little different than that. But it's a good one. I highly recommend you pick it up. In the book, George Leonard describes the mastery curve, the path of the master, as being one that starts out with improvement, but then you hit a plateau. The path of the master is largely on a plateau, with some brief moments of improvement followed by a new plateau that's slightly higher than the old one. If you are someone who's working towards mastering a complex skill or profession, you're going to find many times that you are on what seems to be an endless plateau. He contrasts the path of the master with that of a dabbler, someone who starts out, makes rapid progress, and then hits a plateau, struggles a little bit, and then quits. This would be somebody who is easily distracted, someone who doesn't like the hours needed, the discipline needed. This is somebody who finds something new to do and is easily distracted. That's the path of the dabbler. He also contrasts it with the obsessive. So someone who is obsessive would be somebody who falls in love with whatever it is that they're doing. Say, for example, lifting weights. They fall in love with it. They work really hard, they make rapid gains, and then they hit that plateau. They redouble their efforts, and they make some more progress, but then eventually they hit another plateau, they redouble their efforts, and then they end up injuring themselves. And then they'll repeat this process until they eventually burn out or injure themselves so bad that they can't continue. This would be the obsessive. And then there's also the hacker. The hacker would be someone who begins, makes progress, hits the plateau, and then kind of stays at that plateau for the rest of their career. This would be a hacker. The difference between a hacker and the master would be that the master continues to seek out ways to improve themselves, and they would eventually find ways to improve and hit new plateaus at higher and higher levels. So he talks about the difference between those four types of progress or lack of progress. If you are on the path to mastery, he says that there are 5 keys towards mastery. And those 5 keys are instruction, practice, surrender, intentionality, and the edge. So if you are someone who wants to be really good at something, then you must seek out instruction. That is the first key. That just kind of finding your own way, while many of us can make great progress all on our own, that having competent instruction matters a lot. Finding a guru is important. Now, when I say a guru, I don't mean a guru who's going to lead you into some weird thing. I mean someone who really understands, is an expert, and is a good teacher. So finding instruction is really important. There are times where you will outgrow your instructor. So that's also important. That is also part of finding good instruction, is knowing when this is not good instruction, and knowing when you've moved beyond what this person can teach you. So finding instruction is the first key to mastery. Another is practice. I think we understand that you have to love the process in order to become a master at something. To continue and to sustain the effort of practice, you have to love that practice. You have to love the process, and that's what practice is all about. It's continually making the small improvements and practicing the small skills and working on those fundamentals again and again and again. That's the second key, practice. The third key is surrender. Surrender is understanding that there are times where you need to sacrifice your current position for the sake of longer term gains in the future. So I find this often to be the case with people who are learning new skills, especially when they are lifting, for example. There are times where you might have to make some adjustments in technique, for example. And those adjustments in technique might lead to you actually lowering your performance, at least in the short term. So you may have to surrender your current position in order to make longer term gains. That's surrender. That's the third key. The fourth key is intentionality. This is the concept of mindfulness, which most of us understand, that you need to be mindful, that it cannot be just mindless practice. It has to be mindful practice. And then the last key is understanding the edge. And the edge is that paradox of pushing to the edge of what you can do, taking some risk, and at the same time understanding that the idea of kind of that plateau is also very essential to your development. So understanding that the edge is also important, and being able to balance that plateau with pushing hard. That's the fifth key to mastery. All right, so I hope you will pick up a copy of this. He goes on to talk more about some of those tools for mastery. Have a great night. I'll see you on the next Skwat Talks.